Hello everyone, welcome along to Live On Air this evening. We've just had a few technical hitches with getting our Dimi Narkov and Matthew Morks in, and I'm hopeful that they'll be coming in a few minutes. But before that happens, let's just have a look at the kinds of questions that we're going to ask tonight. And I'll just present this to everyone. There are three basic things that we want to really get going with this evening's broadcast. We want to look at what are the creative steps needed for making and marketing short films, including YouTube for beginners. We want to look at how we can finance projects, both short features and long features. And we also want to look at the ways in which we can promote film. So those are quite big issues for the evening, and I'm really hopeful that these guys are going to come in soon, because I don't know that I can talk a great deal about this. But having said that, I've been involved in making little YouTube videos now for a number of years, and I think one of the keys to doing that is around enthusiasm for topics and so on and so forth. So let's just take as a beginning point, how does one decide, when does one decide that you want to get involved in making movies? Now, I think this is a really big issue, and young people particularly, because that's what we're aiming at tonight, is those who want to get started in movies. Young people, if they could be like Peter Jackson, and when they're very, very little, in fact, they're sort of got Super 8 cameras, and they're making models, and they're doing all sorts of creative things to get people going. So the real question is, how do we encourage young movie makers to begin to get serious about the particular issues? Now, I see we've got a couple of concurrent viewers coming in, but just while we're doing that, I'd like to bring the screen share up again, and I'm just going to go back and see if I can pick up with Matthew and with Dimi. So let's just tie-ho for a moment, give me a few seconds, and later on we'll edit this part of the video out. Thanks very much for bearing with us. We haven't had them in yet, and hopefully they'll get those links sent through in their emails fairly soon. So I began making YouTube videos back in 2012 as a means of distributing tutorial information, but I didn't think that that was particularly creative when I first started doing it. And I had a number of comments. People would say, oh, that was a pretty wooden thing, you're just sitting there and presenting information, talking head style. But if I think back in my memory, for a very long time as a young person, I wanted to get involved somehow in a creative process that did, it wasn't quite movies, but how does one present oneself? How does one present information? How do you teach? I guess was something that intrigued me as a youngster. And I think I was about 12, 13 or something. There was a feature film made about New Zealand. I think it was called This Is New Zealand, and it had some very famous narration in it. And it also used the music of Sibelius to really get going. And the Finlandia were the kinds of themes, and the planes were sweeping through, and you could also all sorts of beautiful scenery shots going on. And I think that was probably the movie that intrigued me the most. That was going to the films, watching something that was essentially documentary and advertising in one kind of way. But at the same time, it was showing something very beautiful, something very creative, something that started to attract me or draw me in to that idea of filmmaking. So it's not something that I ever acted on as a teenager or a young adult or, you know, all the way through life. But then suddenly in the internet age, the ability for everyone to begin to make music and begin to get involved in the creative process has suddenly come very, very much alive. And so I guess my first comment would be that any young person that wants to get going, they've got the technology that we never had. They've got the opportunities that an older generation never had. And yet it's probably as hard, if not harder than ever, to make some kind of useful impact in terms of making even short movies, short video on YouTube. And so how do we actually get going? What's the first step? What's the first creative step that we need to take to make a little movie on YouTube? Now, if you're a musician, you've in some ways got an easier proposition because you can make a music video, and there have been any number of highly successful, highly creative young people that, well, you can think of Lord, for example, have taken the world by storm, and all the stuff started in a very low-key way as a teenager wanting to communicate some musical and text ideas that came together that communicated very directly with her friends, with her peer group. And from small YouTube beginnings, I think the whole thing took off in an explosive viral kind of way, and we really saw something extraordinary emerge. She's not the only one, of course. There have been numerous examples of people that, young people that have used the power of the internet to take their creative process to an entirely new level. And when I look back at my first YouTube video, how wooden it was, how stereotypical of the talking head, well, you could say I've got talking head with me right now. That's very true. But what we need to do is to start to encourage the young people in our churches, our congregations, our youth groups, our communities, to begin to start making little videos, because by making little videos and getting them out there on YouTube, you create a platform for your deepest levels of communication. And you get communities involved in making videos, and all of a sudden you're into an entirely different ball game. So the key to success in YouTube, and I think I can say that we've had some degree of success on a tiny little limited channel with the keywords practical theology. Practical theology is hardly even figures in Google searches. Theology is, it's a quality word, but it's just not there. Most of the world does not want to search for these things. But we've gone from a couple of hundred watched minutes of video to a couple of thousands of watched minutes of video to hundreds of thousands of watched minutes of video. And I'm not 100% sure, but one of the goals that I believe that we're on track with is the idea that by making our movies better on YouTube, by improving the quality of what we want to say, by improving the quality of how we want to say it, by improving the visuals of it, by learning to tell the story on YouTube, we can actually get that realm of theology, church history, pastoralia, all those things can be got out there in a new and vibrant kind of way for the generation that is not there in church. So the key is getting a group of people working with younger people to get them started in crafting the kinds of videos that really do have key content. Now, let's take a typical music video, Taylor Swift, someone like that. And when you think of the immense creative effort that has gone into writing the song, getting all the musicians and dancers, the whole crew assembled, you're looking at big budget items. But the reality for the vast majority of young people is they don't have any money whatsoever to put together a YouTube. So they might have formed a little local band in the high school, friends in the class, whatever, and they practice in a garage. They can take a smartphone out, and with a smartphone, they've got an ideal method of recording some video. Hey, how about for your congregation? In congregations, what we're seeing more and more is a rapidly aging population with virtually no one in the youth group, age group, at least in English-speaking Pākehā Pālangi congregations in the New Zealand context, a bit different in Pacifica, but I suspect the writing is on the wall there too. These congregations are not only lacking Sunday schools and youth groups, they're also lacking the parents of those young people. And that has made a tremendous gap. So, pardon me, we start from the perspective, we've got to find not only making videos, we've got to find how to creatively tap into the energies of the young in such a way that they will want to bring it into the church. Now, this is my challenge. I think every congregation needs to identify some mokapuna, some grandchildren, and working with their parents, say, we would like to tell our story. Good video, good movies, great music making is always on about telling a particular story, communicating something of oneself, putting the creative energies into the story. So getting started starts with a script, and a script implies a little bit of editing process. Editing is probably the most neglected task, and the young person doesn't necessarily want to do this when they make a little YouTube movie. We know there's a huge generation of pardon me, taking selfies, going out there. We've got the so-called video logs, people walking down the street having little conversations with themselves. I don't think that that's content that's going to strike particularly responsive chords. When I listen to a Lord song, when I listen to a Taylor Swift video, watch a Taylor Swift video, all of these things, content is king. They have created masterful content. They've created gripping content. Their songs, their stories, their videos are telling compelling stories with compelling evidence of what's going on. Now, this is the most amazing thing, as far as I'm concerned, about congregations. They have compelling stories to tell, but they no longer tell compelling stories about themselves. Instead, what they tend to do is try to tell compelling stories about the Bible or other kinds of things that all happened a long time ago. And those things aren't necessarily going to communicate all that well with anyone unless they're shaped, formed, crafted, and put into a package. And the video, the short video, the compelling video is the package. So recently I did one on Istanbul and the Hagia Sophia, or sometimes called the Hagia Sophia. The Hagia Sophia, a tremendous mosque, which was a Christian church, and a tremendous story behind it. And in order to make that short 6-7 minute video, one had to not only get a script together, one had to think beyond the script to what are the kinds of images that are going to go with each sentence in this video. How are image and text going to fit together in such a way it will create a message that attracts people to want to watch to the end. Now, here's an interesting statistic from what I do on YouTube. And this could be totally different if Timmy and Matthew were in with us, but from their perspective, they would have an entirely different basis for starting. But my basis in video is I want to tell a story about theology. I want to tell a story about faith. I want to tell a story about our faith journey. And with these ideas in mind, one has to select. It's very easy to create a YouTube video. You can, if you've got 100 photos and you upload them to Google+, it'll even tell you step by step how to create a video, and you can put an audio commentary on top of it. But the idea is that the compelling shot, the compelling scene will somehow enhance the words or the text or the speech of what's going on. So from what we want to do is to create compelling stories that are, in a sense, micro documentaries of congregations and congregational life. And the key to success for this is that people in congregations have to be able to share their own story in a natural and I guess in a caring kind of way. Their story is also part of the congregational story, which is part of the wider Christian story. So what we see, this disconnect, why there's such a vast range of age groups missing from churches today, is that most people, I think, sitting in congregations haven't been able to communicate very much about movies at all, apart from the fact that they went to the movies at one stage of their life and probably were quite dedicated movie goers. Now, Stuart Mannins has raised the following question. He said, history tells me that children copy what adults in the household do. If parents sing, the kids will sing. If parents play the trombone, the kids will want to start. Later on, they may choose different instruments and should be choosing from a wide spectrum, but encouraged to find their own music-making ability. Now, it's a great idea, Stuart, and it pertains exactly to this concept of making movies. And where does it all begin? If we were to ask Sir Peter Jackson where it all began for him, it is in copying something that his parents had in terms of the cinema camera and making models, gorillas, that kind of thing, and learning just how to compose a shot. And bit by bit, he builds up a repertoire from a young guy, I mean a very young guy, pre-teens. He builds up a repertoire over 10, 15, 20 years in order to put together, finally, this creative vision that drives Lord of the Rings. And now, that can't be done overnight, but it can demonstrate that he's copied the fact that his parents were interested in a little bit of cinematography because they had a camera. With the ubiquitous iPhone or smartphone today, the camera is everywhere. The question is how to use the little bits of video we capture and put them into that compelling story. And this is where that other process, that editing, that ability to stand back and shape and craft the story becomes all important. Now, there's a brilliant little video that was put together for a promotion, the promotion of a book, and we put it on Kiwi Connexion. And what we saw were 4 or 5 people just telling what compelled them to read the book through to the end. If the video allows people to tell those sorts of stories, what What motivated them to see this journey through? What motivated them to stick with the church when the church had let them down? What motivated them to keep working away at raising families within a Christian environment? I don't mean a church environment, but an environment permeated with the kind of values of Christ, etc. If we can get people telling those deep and significant moments, and even if they can only say it for 30, 35 seconds, and your iPhone is recording it, and you're then just using a simple video editing program to string it together, to take out the bits that don't make much sense, to incorporate some new things, a little bit of text here, a little bit of text there, you've got the start of a significant documentary. In the Waiake congregation, Trinity-at-Waiake, we had a very elderly lady, Ella Oldfield, who, when she turned 100, came to church a few weeks after the birthday party and got up and gave a fantastic speech. Now, Ella Oldfield actually did a video interview with me all those years ago, 20, however long ago it was, and I cannot any longer track down the video, and in a significant piece of social history has disappeared. And I'm really quite alarmed by the fact that I can't find where that video is anymore, because what it described was the early part, Ella telling her own story about the early part of her life where she was a pianist at the silent movies. Now, this is so far removed from where we are in the 21st century that it seems almost impossible. But anyway, point I'm making is that one of the reasons why I don't think movie making has made much of an impact in the traditional congregations is because the older generation weren't all that much interested in making movies at that stage. So I agree, Stuart, your question is excellent. I think we've done answering it. If parents are interested in something, often children will copy that. But Stuart's also sent in a second question, and I think it's really pertinent to the idea of getting started in YouTube. Music helps create mood. How can you encourage young movie makers to explore this connection? Well, Elise McAdam really worked at the idea of mood creation in her video series on Live On Air, and young movie makers are almost certainly wanting to explore that connection between mood, music, and image. That's far more part of their lives, I suspect, than we realize. And this isn't something that is just there because parents explore it. It's there because it's part of the medium, the media in which we live and move today. And we can't possibly avoid it. So I would think that part of the creative steps for making a YouTube movie is to get onto YouTube and to actually find out where the Creative Commons music is. Now, a lot of people illegally download YouTube music and do all sorts of strange and weird things with it. Well, they can get away with that, except when it comes to wanting to make their own YouTube movies. And YouTube are very, very strict about not infringing copyright. So if you want to use some music in your little clip about your congregation or about your own life or the little documentary you want to make sure that you go to the Creative Commons YouTube music. There's an absolute ton of it that you can use, an incredible amount, and it can set all sorts of moods, from dramatic, symphonic kinds of music, a bit like the openings to Star Wars, that kind of thing, through to pretty evocative, gentle guitar, piano, harp, whatever. Absolute ton of Creative Commons video and also Creative Commons music that you can use. And the only thing is, you do have to acknowledge in the video that you create exactly where you got it from. And you'll find in a few of the videos that I've put out, there's a YouTube attribution. Now, having said all of that, unfortunately, Stuart McAdam is away. He couldn't make he's away in South Africa. He couldn't make tonight's broadcast. And one of Stuart's ideas was, once you've got a young person, 16, 17, 18-year-old, interested in making movies, the one thing they're going to ask is, well, I've got no budget to make a movie. Sure, I can use my smartphone, but that's not necessarily going to edit out to the right kind of audio levels. It's not going to do all the kinds of sophisticated video editing that I want to do. It's not necessarily going to communicate as well as I want, because let's face it, 90% of the stuff that's produced on YouTube isn't all that good. It's unedited is what I would say. It's not critiqued properly by the creators. So how do you get budget to help you with music? How do you get budget to help you with equipment? How do you get budget to help you put together something that's not, well, maybe just a little beyond the documentary style video that I've been talking about? And I think that there are some funding mechanisms when you start to want to do a bigger movie. Now, we'll get Stuart McAdam to talk about those funding mechanisms, and Matthew Mork, so I'll get them to give some email correspondence in on this. But once you're wanting a little bit of budget, and I must admit, I want a little bit of budget. I've got a dream of a kind of a documentary all about natural theology up and down New Zealand, in line with the Through the Year with John Wesley series that I did. But I can't possibly afford to do it. So I'll be thinking about how I might be able to apply some budget if that dream comes up. But both Matthew and Stuart will be able to answer directly any queries that come through a congregation, someone watching this particular live on air. They'll be able to answer any queries about budget that you might have, and would be happy to do so. So I'm just going to select the question that's come in from Clive Dyson, who is really rather talented, I was going to say young YouTube maker. No, Clive, you're not exactly a young YouTube creator, but you're an enthusiastic one. And you've made the observation here that for older people, how do you get over the self-consciousness to appear in a video and tell your story? And you say, this is my problem. I make videos on YouTube where I'm not seen, but to get audience interaction, a personal appearance is helpful. Well, yeah, I wish I could answer that in a sort of a broad sweep, Clive, but I don't think I can. I think it's a fantastic question, but it's basically boils down to, how do you encourage someone to expose a little bit of themselves into the video? And I mentioned the case of Ella Oldfield. The other video that I was referring to, I wasn't going to mention it by name, but I will now. Rosalie Segru wrote one of the books. You can find it in Kiwi Connexion. And her son, Troy, who's professional in this field, he made a wonderful little series of videos. Now, all the people that were talking about Rosalie's book were enthusiastic supporters of it, and they were all, I guess in a way, not afraid, not scared to appear on video. But when you are a little bit self-conscious, when you're a little bit nervous, to be able to get over that hurdle, I think is, yeah, it can be the butterflies are in the tummy, etc., etc. It's a little bit like tonight, if I can be perfectly frank. When we didn't have the guys coming in and presenting, I get a little bit nervous, but I sort of feel confident in myself that I can handle about a half an hour of live performance off the basis of what I know. And that may be the clue to anyone who's nervous appearing on camera, who's nervous about going on radio, who's nervous about presenting in worship situations, that if you are telling things that come deeply from within what you believe, that part of your life story, then your confidence level will actually be much, much higher, because you're talking about the thing you know best about yourself. Sometimes we don't know ourselves very well, but when we're talking, say, about making writing a book, or when we're talking about crafting a toy, when we're talking about making a YouTube movie, and this is where Clive's really good. I mean, he's done animations, he's done travel logs. I think the one that he did on China would stack up against any YouTube movie in that theme, in that genre. But to actually get in front of the camera, yeah, that can be quite daunting. So you've got to be telling the story about yourself. And this, I think, applies also in that worship leading situation. Now, Clive was a minister for a good many years, and so is not unafraid to present, but I know well enough that the vast majority of clergy and lay preachers can be very nervous about doing Sunday worship, about leading Sunday worship. They're not all performers. They're not all extroverts. They don't all necessarily like being up front, centre stage, having to perform. They may have a message to share, but that doesn't mean that it takes away the sense of nerves. The butterflies in the tummy remain. But I have noticed consistently when preachers, I saw this particularly with theological students, when they start to talk about the things that have happened to them, their experiences, their confidence at presenting suddenly goes up compared to often having to discuss a theological idea. Doing that kind of thing on a Sunday performance is enough to make anyone very nervous. So in terms of getting started in YouTube, I would say that it's learning what part of your own story you want to tell. I hope that answers that particular question, Clive. Now, I see we've come to about half an hour, but I've got a couple of little things that I want to talk about. First of all, audio. I've had a couple of audio issues in live on air broadcasts recently, as well as I've had a few issues getting people in. But the big thing is, if you don't have good quality audio, then any kind of video will fail. And this is what happens an awful lot when you see people taking selfies and that kind of thing. The wind is whistling through the microphone of the camera, and you can get some really bad audio stuff. You do have to figure out how to do audio well so that your video can succeed. And that requires messing around with the equipment. It requires a little bit of trial and error. It requires a little bit of thinking a little harder about what you're going to want to sound like. Rosalie, I didn't know that you were watching live on air, but it's great that you are. And you put in this comment that you say may be helpful. Troy, her son, for Rosalie's video, interviewed each person individually on their own patch. He went to them. He simply chatted to them, then chose the bits he wanted for the video. Rosalie, I think that's a quite brilliant and creative tip for a lot of people that want to get started in this. And that's part of the art of telling social history, because telling our story collectively of who I am, who we are, who our church is, who our community or group is, that is adding into this potpourri of ideas. And what a fantastic potpourri of ideas it actually is. Rosalie, I wonder if you could just also send through, would you like to just tell us the title of the book and where you can get it? And I'll then see if I can then later on, when this is being sent out, I'll put in the URL in Kiwi Connexion so they can watch the video. But I think it's in a number of places. It could well be on Philip Garside's website as well. So I'll just wait for Rosalie to type that through. Well, we've got just a few minutes left before we get to the 40-minute mark. Are there any other questions? Look for the Q&A pod, and I'll just check out. Usually we've had through this broadcast, we've had 5 concurrent viewers. I was chatting to Dimi and Matthew earlier. We were in a Google Hangout, but I don't know why these links keep on changing within the Google system. So, yep, I'm not getting anything else coming through. So just bear with me. I'll bring up the screen share and see whether we've answered all the questions that we set ourselves. What are the creative steps needed for making and marketing short films, including YouTube for beginners? Yes, I think we've done that. How can we finance projects, both shorts and features? And what are the ways that we can promote the films? So in a nutshell, promotion, I think, is kind of critical. And I use now a little program. It only costs me a small amount of money. It's called vidIQ. And vidIQ has the ability to take the YouTube videos that I make, and with it takes hours and hours to upload the jolly things. But as you upload them, you can also get them archived on vidIQ and then sent over to Facebook. And you will have seen in recent weeks that I've now got both Friends of Kiwi Connexion and Live on Air. And so vidIQ is doing all the Friends of Kiwi Connexion movies. It's an automated process. So they're not only on YouTube, but the same URL, the same link is now on Facebook. But overall, I would want to say that marketing and promotion of movies is really dependent on how good the quality is. We all know that cat videos can go viral and pet videos can go viral and so on. But lots of videos go viral and then there's nothing else. And so it's a little bit of moment of glory, if you like. Careful work in making the script of your video and then uploading that script into YouTube will make it much more searchable. It's called search engine optimization. Fancy title for the way in which the computers crawl the net and gather information. So, to promote your YouTube videos, I would strongly recommend putting a script in and closed caption. Now, YouTube will tell you itself how to go about doing that. It's not something that I want to describe in terms of technical process, but any young person that's starting out, if they put their script in, upload it into the closed caption section and publish it as a text file, YouTube will do the matching of the words roughly to the speaking of the voices. So last comment before we close, it's come through from Rosalie, and Rosalie says the novel is called The League of Lilith, and Philip Garside has it as an ebook, and there are only a few hard copies left. Troy's got a few of these. Rosalie says up under his bed in Auckland. So I guess, well, there can't be many left, Rosalie. So that's a good publishing run if you've got rid of all of them. The ebook I would certainly recommend as a way to go. But if you want the video, go to PGPL, that's Philip Garside Publishing, the kiwiconnexion.nz if I remember correctly, and you should be able to find that league of, whoops, there we go. I've just got rid of that, sorry about that. You should be able to find that video, and then from there you'll be able to get a really good rundown of how to make a video about something that you've done that's really exciting. Well, thank you all very much for watching, and I'm going to have to learn how to get these links sorted out so that Matthew and Dimmy will be really hacked off with me because they didn't come in tonight, but that's not their fault, that's mine. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. And I think I'm on by myself next week on the art of writing books, but I may see if I can get Rosalie Segru on with me. Thanks, see you next time.